Hey everyone! So today for my Hot Topics presentation, I want to talk about the trend in vaccine exemptions. I think it's something that's definitely popular topic right now. We're seeing some diseases that have come back that once were very popular, hence why they have a vaccine for them. And then also, I just want to go into some details of a particular disease. So I wanted to start our conversation today by showing a vaccine schedule from birth to about kindergarten. That's when we receive the most vaccines in our life, and I think it's important that we understand what we're receiving, and then also to think about how if you weren't to receive those vaccines, how that would impact you as a child and then other children as well. So just to start things off, so right when you're born, you get the hepatitis B vaccine, and then in months 1 and 2 of life, you receive the second dose. So at month 2, that's when you start these vaccination regimens, So you get your first dose of Tdap, which protects against diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. You get your first dose of the Haemophilus influenza virus. I'm sorry, I always mispronounce that. So I'm just going to move on. And then you get your first dose of the polio vaccine, and then you also get the first dose of the rotavirus, and then also the PCV13, which protects against pneumococcal disease. And then, so as you can follow along on the chart here, at month 4, you just receive the second dose of all those vaccinations. And then at month 6, the only new things that are introduced is you can get your first round of the regular flu vaccine, as well as your third round of hepatitis B, and then the third round of the polio vaccine. So at month 12, we can receive the fourth round of the PCV13 vaccine, as well as your first dose of MMR, which protects against the measles, mumps, and rubella, varicella, which protects against the chickenpox, and hepatitis A, which you can receive the first and second dose as long as they're 6 to 18 months apart. And then at 15 months, you get your fourth dose of Tdap, and then we fast forward all the way to about 4 to 6 years, which is about the time children are starting kindergarten. So they're receiving their fifth Tdap, fourth IPV, which protects against polio, and then their second doses of MMR and varicella. So I know that was a lot to say, but I just wanted to mention all that so that we could see the importance of receiving those vaccinations and think about how it's not only protecting the child from those diseases, but it's also protecting the community. So one thing that's on the rise, and I'm sure that you all have seen it in the news, is the prevalence of measles. Growing up, that's something that I never really thought about as being something that would be a disease that me or my friend or a virus that we would have. But it's definitely coming back around, which, as I'll speak on earlier, we are on the wrong side of that equation. So a little history about measles. 1912, measles became a national notifiable disease, and this is from the CDC. Measles were considered eliminated completely in 2000 in the United States. And that was in response to a highly effective vaccination program. So, in 2000, we were very diligent. Children receive these vaccinations at X, Y, and Z at these ages, and, we saw a lot of success from that. So I looked into a little bit how measles was transmitted, which I thought was really interesting. The measles can actually live for up to 2 hours in a space where a person that has had measles has been. It can live up to 2 hours in the airspace. It's spread by droplets, often by coughing and sneezing. And we as humans are the only ones that carry the measles virus. So, it's not carried by bats, pigs, or any kind of other animals. So I liked this little cartoon guy here. It's someone with the measles. So another thing I found interesting is that the measles appear 7 to 14 days after contact with the virus. So, that is a long contact or a long incubation period. So the first symptoms include a high fever, rash, cough, runny nose, and watery eyes. I equate this to, it sounds like a lot of cold and flu symptoms, so it would be very difficult to differentiate that between that and the normal cold and flu symptoms. But after these symptoms appear, 2 or 3 days later, you'll start to see Koplik spots, and those are on the inside of your mouth. And again, those appear 2 to 3 days after those cold and flu-like symptoms appear. And then, as you can see in this picture, a measles rash will appear 3 to 5 days after those first cold and flu-like symptoms. So at this point, the treatment is some antibiotics, and also, just treat the symptoms with some acetaminophen, bring the fever down. So this is, again, why it's very, very important to receive those vaccinations. So unfortunately, today I'm speaking on an upward trend in the measles in the United States. In the first quarter of 2019, there has been 704 reported measles cases, and that is from the CDC. This is the highest reported number of cases since 1994, and we're seeing the highest prevalence rate in which makes sense, in non-vaccinating communities, and I'll just elaborate a little bit more on that. So that are communities that are claiming that, they don't vaccinate their children for religious reasons. But those trends have definitely infiltrated into our school systems and affected, even adults. So it's not just limited to those non-vaccinating communities. So a percentage of children that are under-vaccinated under the age of 2 has quadrupled since 2001. So that's not children that are, being exempt from all their vaccinations, but we're definitely seeing a trend in parents choosing to, exempt their child from some of the vaccines that are on their normal schedule, as I showed you. 47 states allow vaccination for religious reasonings, and then I found interesting that 18 states permit philosophical exemptions. I actually know of someone who has exempt their child just due to philosophical reasonings. Their child is not yet in the school system, so they've not had to cross that bridge yet, but it is not against their religion. They just truly believe that they don't want to vaccinate their child. It's not an issue yet, and what I mean by that is, we're not seeing an pandemic of, these diseases that are easily preventable by vaccines, but we're definitely seeing the trend in parents' choice of to vaccinate their children going in the wrong direction. And then one thing I just want to touch base on today is the social media's influence on a parent's vaccination decisions. I think social media has probably brought, some positive light on vaccinating your child, but also some negative light. And I think that's due to just the platform in which parents can debate. And, I see all the time parents asking for recommendations for doctors, and that is how, social media a lot of times is how we receive our our recommendations for the services that we want to choose. And I think that social media has really sparked a platform for parents to discuss their opinions on vaccinating their child. A negative impact of social media is, I think, sometimes it can create fear in parents by seeing over-dramatized posts or over-dramatized, videos, and just all these things that can be put on there, and they're just at your thumb for you to scroll and see. And then also, we all know that Facebook has a large platform of news articles and blog posts, and sometimes those are just not reliable news sources. And unfortunately, I think we live in a time where we have access to a large library of information, but sometimes we are guilty of just choosing the information that is right at our fingertips and the most easily accessible. So I think that has also had a large impact on parenting styles in general, and then I also think just the choice to vaccinate your child. So I thank y'all for listening to my conversation today on vaccines. Thank y'all.